Hey everyone, welcome back to the dungeon with me, talking about some albums that I enjoy and other things today. So this album came up in conversation that I was having with someone. It was a little while ago now, and I'd listened to this album on and off, but the conversation, made me think of it, and I started listening to it again. And was kind of just putting things into perspective. I really realized the impact this album kind of has in heavy metal, hard rock, in that genre in particular. And it's not a band you'd think of perhaps in that way. They definitely had an impact, but I think a lot of people think this band's impact was maybe more kind of like on the poppier side, or maybe in the music video side of things. But with the release of this particular album, they're very early on in the burgeoning heavy metal kind of genre, and the songs kind of have this a sound, and like the playing and things like that weren't really kind of being done in America. You're more hearing these things kind of coming from European bands at the time. So not to keep you in suspense any longer, the band is Twisted Sister, and the album is You Can't Stop Rock and Roll. And you probably think, you're talking about Twisted Sister, you're going to talk about Stay Hungry or Come Out and Play, and those are both amazing albums. But this album ends up being my favorite from them. And I've never encountered like really hardcore Twisted Sister fans. A lot of people are casual. Obviously they know of the band from the music videos and We're Not Gonna Take It, and the other videos they did. They had a bunch of really kind of outlandish ones and memorable ones as well. But this album predates all of that stuff by a few years. This album is released in 1983. And if you think of the timeline in 1983, I mean, you have heavy metal is already, a somewhat established genre. You've got, your Black Sabbath has already released a ton of albums at that point. You've got Motorhead kicking around. AC/DC and the hard rock kind of side of things. Led Zeppelin, had disbanded at that point, but they had their hands in early heavy metal kind of development and stuff like that. And a few European bands that were kind of like early kind of coming into heavy metal and creating the genre, except German bands. Like there was these bands getting into it early. And in 1983, when you think of like kind of the first American heavy metal album that really kind of came around, most likely a lot of people would probably point to Metallica being the kind of the early fingerprint of heavy metal in America. And this album, I don't know month-wise where they kind of coincide with each other in their release, but both released in 1983. And Twisted Sister had already been like a club act at that point, and so they had a really kind of like awesome established sound that had most of its DNA coming from hard rock and a little pop influence. But on this album in particular, you get some songs on here that are like brimming on being power metal, almost not quite say the tempo of like a Halloween or Manowar or somebody like that, but definitely getting up there in tempo and double bass, and not really something you'd expect from if you think of what Twisted Sister kind of became, and what everybody kind of thinks of them being. It's like there's a handful of songs on this album that they do have like faster kind of songs on some of their later material as well, but it's not nearly as well known. it gets overshadowed by the singles and stuff like that. But this album, this was definitely not the first thing I'd ever heard from Twisted Sister. I mean, like everybody else, he likely heard "You're Not Gonna Take It." Probably had seen the music video at some point, and I mean, there's no denying that that's like, one of the greatest like rock anthems, if you want to call it that, that's ever been written. And it's definitely not a song I want to listen to with any kind of regularity. It's a great song, but I mean, oversaturated at this point, yes. I mean, you've heard it everywhere, and then it had a resurgence with a certain presidential candidate for a little while a few years ago, and made the rounds again. So it's a song that kind of it's with the tide. It rises and it falls and it comes back, and it's like, so it's definitely not a song I ever listened to outside of hearing it, without my own influence or whatever. But the rest of the albums are great. But this is an album that I'll put on from front to back and kind of listen to all the way through. This is early Twisted Sister. This is still like kind of production wise, it's still kind of like a little bit more raw. It doesn't have quite the polish that some of the the later material has from them. But it has a drum sound that I really like a big kind of boomy sound, and AJ Pero is a fantastic drummer, and another drummer that's gone much too soon that probably deserves more credit than he gets. But people that dig his style, they can appreciate what he did. I know somebody like Mike Portnoy is a big fan of AJ's playing and what he did on these albums, but. As far as this album goes, it's it seems to be a theme with a lot of my favorite albums. Is that side A is usually ends up being my favorite kind of like it has, I don't know whether they weighted it that way back then, where the strongest songs were side A, and then later on, like some people started flipping it around and putting some better songs on side B to actually have you flip, but. This is another one of those albums where it ends up being side A is my favorite and definitely the most played. So I actually just recently covered Ride to Live, Live to Ride, which is a cool song, such an awesome song. It has such a cool drum groove, and it's just has this kind of unrelenting, just kind of like a pulse behind it. And I have no idea what the lyrics are really about. I'm guessing it's about bikers, and I've heard Dee Snider reference bikers when he's talking about it, so I'm assuming it's about riding motorcycles. But yeah, just the music on its own, it's such a cool song. The Kids Are Back opens this album, and that's a great song too. Has a really great shout along chorus, and like an early kind of, you can see the potential that Twisted Sister ended up achieving with these sing-along choruses and these kinds of lyrics people could identify with, or these, it's almost like call to arms kind of in a way, really getting people to join along with the cause for Twisted Sister or something like that. But so yeah, there's that. Like a Knife in the Back is like very, very cool, like kind of a halftime song. Ride to Live, Live to Ride, I mentioned that one. It's really cool. It's like some double bass stuff on there too, which was 1983 in double bass. It's like you don't have, as I said, not a lot of bands and a lot of musicians really kind of adopting that style as of yet. Obviously there's some being played, but 1983 is still pretty early on in the development of heavy metal. So you have Fast as a Shark and Overkill from Motorhead as a few examples, but AJ was definitely dipping into that stuff on Ride to Live. And another song which kind of leans more into the power metal side that I was speaking of earlier is Power and the Glory, which is fairly up tempo and a lot of double bass, like I don't know if it's quite a shuffle or not, but it definitely has kind of this like a lurching feel to it, sort of thing. And awesome song. It's one of my, one of the songs I got into for practicing to kind of, along with some of the other ones I mentioned earlier, to kind of like get double bass together when I was a bit younger. So, but I Me is another one, which is like a really, if another band, a pop band, had taken that song and changed the instrumentation and stuff like that, you could easily make a really classic pop song out of something like that. I can see the correlation later on where Dee Snider was writing songs, and he famously had a song that he wrote for Celine Dion at one point, and it's like I can see where he had these ideas for these really poppy kind of sing-along things that ultimately made Twisted Sister what they were when they became really popular in the video age. So yeah, side 2 said it's not lacking, but it's definitely no side 1 for me. But he's got the ballad that's on here, Suzette's song. You Can't Stop Rock and Roll. You Can't Stop Rock and Roll, I've actually heard a handful of times on the on classic radio, which I thought was kind of a little strange. I didn't realize, I don't know if it was ever a single upon the initial release of this album. The history for me, like pre, We're Not Gonna Take It, is a little murky. It's like, there's a lot of lore behind the band and stuff. But as far as what the radio would have been playing at that time from these guys, I have no idea if You Can't Stop Rock and Roll was ever on the radio or not, but I've heard it on the radio, local classic rock radio station. So it's definitely got something that's come up in the last 40 years to kind of, somebody at the radio station must really like Twisted Sister or something like that. Or they're just tired of hearing We're Not Gonna Take It as well. That could be the case, but so yeah, anyways, this album, it's come back into rotation for me, and it's I'm not sure where it sits with the fans. I'm sure there's a lot of people that the kind of diehard fans that like me, there's probably this is their favorites, and it's kind of they definitely have the makeup going for them in one aspect here. Sorry, D, covered up your face. But then, they're still kind of carrying the tough kind of, denim and leather kind of image at the same time. So they hadn't fully gone into the Twisted Sister mode yet at this point. And, I like the denim and leather, kind of look for those guys. It's cool. It's they still have a great compelling look for them, but I understand why people enjoy the makeup and all that stuff too, because it's the classic look for the band or whatever. But it is cool to see Twisted Sister, even on the album insert. You've got them kind of just dressed in the '80s rocker outfits, the tougher outfits, not the flashy spandex outfits, but. So yeah, definitely a cool album. If you're a fan of Twisted Sister at all, or probably aware of them at this point, I can't imagine you've escaped a couple of the songs. But if you've never given this album a chance, this is a cool kind of early peek into Twisted Sister before all the spectacle and that kind of stuff took over the band. Like really kind of rooted in like hard rock, and it said early burgeoning kind of like heavy metal before it had really gotten established. And probably some of these guys like some of the early heavy metal quote unquote musicians would probably look at something like this and likely take some inspiration from it. I said you've got bands like Motorhead, Anvil, a handful of other ones, and yeah, this album comes out at a time where it probably could get lumped into some of that very early heavy metal. So if you're anything like me, play it loud, mother. That's a good way to listen to this album. So if you haven't ever checked it out, Twisted Sister, Can't Stop Rock and Roll, give it a listen. Throw on the first 3 or 4 songs. Give those a check out, and I'm sure you'll find something on there that you can dig if you're a hard rock fan. So yeah, this is the one about You Can't Stop Rock and Roll. Cheers.